What's up, guys and gals? Thanks for clicking on this video where we're going to be looking at character design, and I'm going to be explaining some of the steps that I take when I'm designing my characters that will hopefully be able to help you out in getting your characters nice and spice. So I'm very excited for this video, but before we get into the video, I did just want to ask anybody watching to go help me out in this month's manga competition in Manga Plus Creators, where I've posted chapters 3 and also chapter 4 now, just barely. I'm doing a double release for this month of my comic Starfire Helios. Links in the description. All right, so now let's get into character design. So for this video, we've got 3 sections that we're going to go through. Section 1, I'm going to be teaching you the rules of character design, specifically what we call color psychology and shape language and silhouettes. Section 2 of this video, I'm going to be demonstrating to you what I call the practical approach, where we're going to put the rules that we've learned aside and use our creative vision as artists to put together a rough draft of our characters. And then the third section of this video, I'm going to be showing you some examples of iterations of characters that I've gone through. So this is the merging/iterations part, where we're going to be merging the rules and our practical approach, and we're going to be going through iterations so we can clean up our characters and get them looking super crisp and ready for our projects. So, section 1, the rules. As we start off this video, I'm going to run you through the rules of character design. I put rules in quotations because, well, as with any rule in art, they can be broken and often are. I think that these rules are useful and that understanding them and practicing with them is essential to mastery. As Pablo Picasso famously said, "Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist." To better organize these rules I'm going to mention, I'd like to break down character design into 4 basic elements. Thinking of character design in this way will help you organize your thoughts better as well. So the 4 elements of character design are: 1, the body. That includes eyes, hair, mouth, facial expressions, and body type, right? 2 is the clothing. 3, the props. Props just means things that are on them or are part of their character, but isn't part of their wardrobe. So, like, for example, a cane for an old person, or maybe a gun for a gunslinger, etc. Right? That's what props are. And then the last one is the colors. All of these things, meaning character design as a whole, should follow a sort of blueprint you've created for the character before designing them. This blueprint I'm talking about is your character synopsis, description, character sheet, etc. Whatever you want to call it, it's basically your plan for the character and where they fit into your world or story. In a future video, we'll talk about creating this blueprint for a character. I've got a cool character sheet template that I want to share with everybody. However, let it be known that in most cases, you should have written out a character synopsis before attempting to design them, as the information therein should inform these 4 elements of your design. Okay, so let's look at the most basic rules of character design. And I know that a lot of you might be familiar with these rules, and they're covered in lots of other videos. But since this is a comprehensive, as the title states, comprehensive guide to character design, I'm going to be including them sort of like bullet point style in this. I'm not going to spend too much time on explaining them, just the bare minimum. So, shape, language, and silhouettes. So, the basic rules is that there are 3 basic geometric shapes that can be included in characters that give off different feelings or vibes. So number 1, circles. These are associated, circles in character designs are associated with a character being soft, lovable, harmless, approachable, or changeable. A good example of a character who uses circular design might be Kirby. That's a really obvious one, actually. Number 2 is squares. So squares incorporated into character design can signify solidarity, being sturdy, strong, supportive, reliable, or inflexible. Number 3, triangles. So triangles are associated with characters that are defined more as being sharp, directional, dynamic, dangerous, or unpredictable. And the goal is to use these shapes to create a unique silhouette. So you'll hear this a lot, that one of the key indicators of a strong character design is a unique silhouette. And a silhouette just means if you replaced the entire character with just a flat gray shape of them, are you able to identify the character just based off of that shape, just based off of that silhouette? And if you look at really famous characters, especially more cartoonish characters, they have extremely unique silhouettes, like Kirby, like Sonic, like Mario, like Cloud Strife. These characters have extremely unique silhouettes that you'd be able to identify immediately. And combining two of these shapes into a character design is a common practice. Now let's look at color psychology. So, color psychology tells us that different colors are related to different emotions, or our brain associates them with different emotions. So I'm going to go through the list of colors and what emotions they typically are associated with. Number 1, red. Red is associated with passion, aggression, and strength. Number 2, orange is associated with excitement, energy, spontaneity. Yellow is associated with joy, creativity, and warmth. Number 4, green is associated with nature, healing, and quality. But this one's kind of an interesting one because there's a bit of a flip side to green, where a lot of people, depending on the situation, will associate green more with toxicity or danger. Number 5, blue. Blue is associated with trust, loyalty, and competence. Pink is associated with compassion, sweetness, and innocence. Number 7, purple is associated with royalty, luxury, or spirituality. Interesting note here, the reason that purple is associated with royalty and luxury is because purple was the hardest dye to get your hands on, and it still, I guess, kind of is, but it was extremely difficult to find things that you could use to dye your clothes purple, so purple was a more expensive tint. Brown is associated with dependability and being rugged and simple. Black is associated with depression, power, or emptiness. And white, the last one, is associated with cleanliness and purity. So your goal is to use this information and incorporate colors into your character design that would communicate something about your character, that would be associated with their personality type or mood, right? And also on top of that, you want to create a unique color palette that helps your character be more identifiable. Just like we talked about with using shapes to create a unique silhouette, we want to use colors to create a unique color palette. As a note here, the shapes that we talked about, so circles, squares, and triangles, and the colors we've talked about are pretty much always more pronounced in cartoonish designs and less pronounced in realistic designs. So your approach to character design will differ based on the nature of your story and your artistic style. The more cartoonish the design, the more exaggeration is expected in your shapes and colors. Just look at Sonic, or all the Sonic characters from Sonic the Hedgehog, Kirby, look at Yami Yugi and all of his triangles and stuff. That he's just pointy. It looks like you can't touch him anywhere without getting cut, probably. And then for realistic designs, these shapes do have an opportunity to show themselves in hairstyle, eyes, clothes, and body type, but will always remain quite subtle. So, for example, if you look at a character like Light Yagami, he's got a lot of jagged, pointy bits in his design while still remaining quite realistic and faithful to realism. And then another good example might be Harry Potter, where the only really noticeable shape incorporated into Harry Potter's design would be his round glasses. And think about it, Harry would give off a different vibe if he was wearing square glasses or slimmer frames. So don't think of shape language as an unbendable rule. A soft and innocent character can have some triangular design incorporated in their shape language. And also don't think of color psychology as an unbendable rule either. For example, browns and blacks are standard clothing and hair colors that do not have to communicate what color psychology would suggest. And also blues, right? Blue jeans, everybody's wearing blue jeans. It doesn't mean we're all dependable. It's more about what color stands out the most in the design, which is often like an accent color. So think of it this way. If I painted an entire room white and then put purple curtains, furniture, flowers, etc. in the room, what do your eyes notice more when you go in that room? The white or the purple? This is what I mean when I am talking about accent colors dictating the color psychology. And you can see tons of examples of how these rules are broken in media. I've got 2 characters that I came up with that are really good examples of how these rules are broken. Number 1, Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter. So when you look at her design, let's ask what kind of shapes does she have, and then also the colors. So shapes, she's a larger woman. She's a round character, right? She's very circular, more than anything else. And she even has the curly hair and the soft, bubbly eyes and face and the rosy cheeks. And then colors, right? She's always wearing pink. When we see her in the movie, in the films, she's wearing an entirely pink outfit. And so when we look at our rules, well, what does that suggest? Well, round, right, means that she is soft, lovable, changeable, etc. And pink means that she is compassionate and loving and innocent. And we all know that Dolores Umbridge is none of those things. She's the complete opposite. And another good example of this would be Saitama from One Punch Man. So Saitama, when we look at his character design, he's quite simple as well. He is round. He has a nice, shiny, bald head that is very round. Nothing sharp or jagged on him, except for when he goes into hype mode, and then the character design changes, and that's part of the comedy. But generally, when we're looking at Saitama, we see him as a lot of round shape language in him. And then he's wearing a lot of yellow, which, if we look at color psychology, says that he would be a joyful, happy character with a lot of energy. And that's not Saitama either, right? And so in these 2 examples, they do the opposite. So they break color psychology and shape language rules to create comedic or dramatic effect through irony. All right, so now that we've done our due diligence and studied color psychology and shape language, it's time for us to forget all of those rules that we just studied. The next part of this video is what I call the practical approach to character design. And here we're not going to be studying anything. Instead, we are going to be doing. The reason that we will forget about these rules of design for a moment is because for most artists, thinking of a list of rules when your pencil touches paper feels restricting. If we approach our initial design with all these rules in mind, they will feel like checklist items and will ultimately hinder our ability to work off of instinct. But if you're thinking we just wasted all our time studying rules, you're wrong, bros. These rules are going to make a reappearance later. Okay, so let's get hands-on with some paper or a digital canvas, and let's follow these steps. Step number 1 is to write our design. That's right, you heard me. Before we draw our design, we are going to be writing it. We will use the 4 elements of character design to organize our thoughts. For this demonstration, I'm going to be designing 2 characters. One is going to be for my manga series, Starfire Helios, and that's going to be more of a realistic design. And the other will be a cartoony video game character that I've come up with. The reason I am designing 2 characters in this video is so that you can see some of the differences in approach for cartoons versus realistic characters. So I have a synopsis already written out to help me decide what direction to go in with both of these characters. Okay, so as you can see, the character for my manga that I'm going to be designing is named Victor Driggs. He is an admiral in a federation, so he's going to be repping tons of regalia. He's an older character and more formal both in behavior and attire. The body will be tall. He's going to be built. He's going to be stacked. Clothing, he'll wear a military-style coat and slacks with regalia and probably a cap. And I put sci-fi twist on there because I got to find some sort of way to show that he is a space admiral. The props, none for this guy. And colors, I'm thinking blue, brown, and gold. And this is just going off of the color scheme of the federation that he belongs to. And for my second character, Dax Widget, I'm thinking he's going to be a tech geek, a skateboarder, and a bunny. So thoughts behind this, it's really common for cartoon characters to either just straight up be animals or have like animalistic traits incorporated. This isn't a must, but I'm just going to try it for this character since I thought it'd be fun. Body is going to be hunched, skinny. Clothing, he's going to probably rep a graphic tee, classic skateboarder style, and some cargo shorts. Props, he's going to be carrying a backpack, a skateboard, and I'm thinking some sort of robo-gadget buddy companion. Since this would be for a video game, it's really common to have a companion. And colors are going to be gray, black, and green. That's just going off of instinct. That's just me imagining the character and choosing colors that feel right. So as I'm writing all of this out, all I'm doing is closing my eyes and picturing the character as I envision them. I don't care about the rules right now. The practical approach relies fully on vision. If you don't have a vision for your character, forget doing this and go get some freaking vision. Where do you get it at? Maybe from a person in real life, maybe from another fictional character, maybe from an inanimate object that you can imagine what it would be like if it was alive. Really from anywhere. But let me give you some directions to go in while looking for a vision. First place to look, your world. Take note, lore trumps rules. This means that if some part of your story would determine what your character looks like or is wearing, that takes precedence over character design rules. If they overlap, that's bomb, that's sweet, but that's not always the case. So for example, for Victor Driggs, I told you that the color scheme for him was just the colors that represent the federation that he belongs to. And so those would take precedence over any other colors that I think might match his personality. A second place to look would be to look for a mashup. So try thinking of two things that you've never seen together in a character. Like with Dax Widget, I asked myself what a nerdy skateboarder would look like. These are two things that don't normally go together. This is a really good strategy to achieve a unique character design. When I'm drawing my character designs, my thought process goes a little like this. I'm asking myself questions like, how can I make the character unique or distinct from its influences? Because typically there's always an influence in the back of my mind when I'm designing a character. So I'm trying to find ways to make it unique. I'm also asking myself how I can combine disparate elements that usually aren't seen together, just like I talked about. I'm asking myself if there are any lore elements that I could add. A really common example of this might be like a scar. If this character was in a battle and got slashed across the face and has a big gash on his cheek, that would be like a lore story element in his design. And then also I'm asking myself what setting the character is in, keeping that in mind because the setting that they're in will dictate a lot of their clothing and wardrobe. Basically, if a kid is a high schooler, he's not going to be wearing wizard robes. Or maybe he is, you know? What do I know? There's a lot of weird high schools out there. And as you can see, when I draw my initial design, I don't draw them like dolls or mannequins that you might see on like a character sheet. I draw them in a pose that feels natural for the character, as this helps me to channel more of that vision that I mentioned. I would only make a character sheet once I've finalized their design and need to create a quick reference. Okay, so now we've got our very first draft of our characters. Maybe you look at it and aren't all that impressed or satisfied with them, and if that's the case, that is okay. That's all right. Don't fret. At this point in the design process, we're ready to call back to our understanding of shape, language, and color psychology and merge those ideas with the design we've created. Or maybe you look at your design that you've made and you already notice you've incorporated shape, language, and color psychology appropriate for your character, as this is often done instinctually. Even if you do find this in your initial design, it's still best to redraw the character a couple of times to see where you can clean them up. This is the merging iterations step. What we're merging is our practical approach with our design rules, and it takes multiple iterations to achieve this. As we go through different iterations of our character, our goals should be, first, to incorporate shape language that fits the character. Second, to add colors that might communicate something about the character. And third, to simplify and streamline the design. All right, so now I'm going to show you my method to properly merging our design rules into our character designs. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a good hard look at what I've drawn. So that way I can start to break apart the design I've created and find out what works and what doesn't. So looking at my character Dax, I've made these decisions. First is that I really liked his ears and how they are kind of in a lightning bolt shape. I want to exaggerate that more, and I want to make his ears bigger. And actually what I'm doing here is I'm going a level deeper into shape language rules, because a lightning bolt is a shape. It's not our basic triangle, square, or circle, but it is a shape that has an association with it. And so beyond those three initial shapes that we talked about, you can also incorporate shapes or symbols that hold significance in the real world, and you can put them on your character. And so, for example, a lightning bolt might communicate that he is fast, full of energy or that he powers things, right? Those are the things that we would typically associate a lightning bolt with. I also realize as I'm looking at this design that I want to change up his proportions a bit. So I did mention I want his ears to be bigger. I want his head to be very large and his feet to be very large. And then his body and arms to be much smaller compared to what you're seeing right now. And beyond those things, I'm not entirely convinced with his short belt combo, so I'm going to see how I change that up. I also want to give him shoes, like skater shoes with the gigantic tongues. And I want to change his glasses to goggles, I realized. I'm really happy with his companion character, Doug the Dodo. I thought it was really funny. And something that you need to consider as well is that since I'm designing this character for a video game, gameplay is an integral part of the character design process. I'm not actually developing a video game, and so I just have to kind of do a little bit of make-believe and pretend I'm designing a video game. And so I've sort of thought up a video game in my mind that this character would go in to help me make those design decisions. So for example, Doug the Dodo, his companion, would be a tiny little robo pet of his, shaped like a dodo but with a drill beak. And he would dig in the ground, dig tunnels for this character to skate in. And basically, to give you an idea of what kind of game I'm imagining when I'm creating this character, imagine something like a Sonic Mania levels where you're going fast and you're skateboarding, and you could get gadget upgrades or upgrades to your skateboard to be able to hover and other stuff like that. And then Doug the Dodo would dig underground and unlock secret passageways and such. That's just a loose idea of the game that I'm imagining as I design this character. So now that I feel like I've grasped this character a little bit more, what I'm going to do to help me merge my design rules is I'm going to note to the side of my character a shape, one of the primary 3 shapes that I want to find ways to incorporate more. And for Dax Widget, it's going to be triangles, and for Doug the Dodo, it's going to be circles. And then I also want to select some colors that I think match this character's personality. And I want to put yellow accents on him to communicate some of that energy and joy that is a part of this character. And I also want to switch green out for blue. I think blue is a really great color to complement the yellow. And then I also want to keep some browns in him, so that way there's a bit of a bridge between him and his robo-bird Doug. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to my character Victor Driggs. So here are my thoughts looking at my initial design. Unlike with Dax Widget, I still feel like I'm off the mark by quite a bit with this character. Overall, I'm just not entirely satisfied, and this often happens. I'm not going to scrap this design, but I am going to make more drastic changes to him in my second draft. Things I'm thinking of changing include I want to give him a happier face and make him more approachable through a little bit more circular shape language. I want to give him thick bushy eyebrows and a mustache, and I'm thinking of making him bald, taking away the cap. I'm not convinced. And also, I want to add augments to him to create more exaggerated shapes and a more unique design, since augmentation is a common theme in my story. And I want to give him big old boots. And what I'll keep is pretty much just the coat. I do like the coat, and I want to find a way to keep that in my next draft. The character is already quite square, which I do like, and I want to keep as the primary shape language, but I want him to be sort of a square primary, circular secondary because of the role in the story. And just like how I talked about with Dax Widget, considering game design as an integral part of the character design for him, since he's a video game character, for this character being in a novel, I need to think about his role and the interactions that I have planned for him with other characters. Knowing this character's role, I need him to look a little softer than he does right now. So having workshopped these characters and torn apart the designs, I'm ready to take them back into the studio and whip up something new for you guys. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you guys my final designs for both of these characters, along with how many iterations they had to go through to get to where they got. So guys, as we come to a close, I want to leave you with a couple thoughts regarding the artistic process and a couple recommendations as well for you. As you've seen and hopefully come to understand, one and done is rarely the case with character design. Of over 40 unique characters that I've designed for my manga, I can count on one hand the ones that have kept their original designs. All of them, however, have kept at least 1 or 2 elements from their original designs. Some characters only went through 2 or 3 iterations, whereas others went through around 10 or more iterations before I finally landed in a place where I was satisfied with their designs. So as I leave you with these closing thoughts, I'm going to be showing you the development cycle for my protagonist, Taiyo Gendo. which all in all was around 3 or 4 months of work. So you can see his evolution and consider the things you've learned in this video. What I want the main takeaway to be for this video, for all of you, is that rushing your work is never a good idea. Don't do it. Don't design a character and then immediately throw them into your work the same day. You're running a big risk by doing that. You're running the risk of realizing down the road that you don't like what you've put together right when you're at the finish line, about to share it online. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that leaving time between the steps in your creative process is hugely beneficial. If I design a character, I sit on it for at least 24 hours. If I sketch a drawing, I sit on it for a day before I allow myself to ink it. If I ink a drawing, I'll sit on that for a while longer before coloring it, etc. This space between steps lets your mind mull over your work. It lets it cook in the oven rather than taking it out prematurely. How many artists have experienced the phenomenon of going to bed on a baller drawing, then waking up the next day to see that the drawing you did that was god tier the night before has mysteriously been replaced with a dumpster fire that only your mother could like? But then you already inked that sucker, or worse, you posted it on Instagram, and yeah, at that point, you're just gonna have to move on to the next one and take the L. So please, give yourself some mull time and take less L's, my friends. So at the end of it all, I present to you guys with Dax Widget and Victor Driggs. Finalized designs that draw on their roles, their worlds, color psychology, and shape language, and mend them together into a cohesive package. That is character design. Alright friends, that's it from me today. So I hope this video has been helpful for you in your path to creating your character, whether it be for a comic, manga, video game, whatever it may be. Best of luck to you. Don't give up on your creative projects. Keep going. Don't let people get you down. Listen to me. You can do it, okay? You can freaking do it. Let's go. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for more art content. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.